Our consciousness and our wisdom can only expand to the volume of the cage of our belief system.
Yeah.
If you come from a mindset of thinking, I have to work hard, I have to kill myself, I have limited resources. So what you have to learn how to do is deconstruct this way of thinking, change your belief system, expand the cage of your belief system. I've always been able to see the future. Like literally, I've always been able to see the future. Even before I went down the spiritual path, I had this ability. And what I see with you is
All right, we're here. Creative Path Podcast. Robert Edward Grant.
good to be here.
Man, you and me have such a beautiful, interesting, semi-related, share a soul somewhere relationship. And it feels so good to be able to be interviewing you on a podcast in a way that I don't think anyone else asks you about. So I'm excited to go down this
I think you're right. I think this is first of all, it's our first time to do a live podcast together.
Totally.
We've done, how many have we done? I guess we just did, was it one or two?
We did one that's still on my YouTube about who built the pyramids and why.
Yes, and that
one
one
people
was
really love. Yeah.
Then we did one that was more deep into math. I remember that. And so this will be our third, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
and I have to have you on mine.
okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't get the invite. Was it lost in the mail?
No, I haven't invited everybody yet, so I'm inviting you now.
Got it. Amazing. So, I'll go on yours. And I want to start off. Most people probably have some idea of who you are. If they follow me, they've seen us. Like I've gone on trips to Egypt with you multiple times, and you are polymath in every sense of the word. You are so talented and gifted in so many areas of life. And you're most known for breakthroughs in mathematics, geometry, ancient Egypt, Leonardo da Vinci's work. I mean, it's you're like Nicolas Cage from so many movies, National Treasure, like a modern day Indiana Jones, so many things. But can you summarize really what the focus of your work is out in the world these days?
You know, it's been an outpouring from my heart, I would say. That's the best way I could describe it. It's like, I never would have thought that I would be doing what I'm doing even 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Like, seriously, never would have thought.
Because your background is as a CEO, president of Shalom.
Yeah.
Like you've been very successful in the kind of the corporate world and specifically like medical.
Yeah, healthcare.
Healthcare. And so now,
fintech also.
And now you're a spiritual leader in the planet. You're being knighted in like countries, right? You just got knighted?
Yeah.
In what?
Yeah.
Portugal?
Yeah.
Like you got
Portugal
knighted.
and Italy.
That's insane. That's insane.
I know, it's crazy.
And
like I said, I'm just sort of like, what is going on with my life?
And so, we have to actually start then at when was the turning point? Like when did this outpouring when did you shift from, say, traditional corporate focus into now an outpouring of your heart?
When I met you, actually, in 2017.
Oh yeah. That is at that time.
Yeah, you thought it was just like
I thought you were just being sweet.
You thought I was just being sweet, right? It's like, no, you changed my life, Adam. Actually, you did play a role in changing my life. For sure you have.
I remember that conversation.
And, I got invited to present for the first time on my work in mathematics, presenting math as a language of the universe. And you were there for that. And I had never done that before.
This was in Egypt in 2017, October 2017.
And it was like, Nassim was kind enough to give me kind of like the best speaking spot, in the whole week. And it was the day we were going to the Great Pyramid. And I was supposed to give like a, 2-hour lecture on math as a language. And I thought people would be bored to tears. And at the end of the discussion, I was stunned. We went long. First of all, it went for like 4 hours instead of 2.5 hours. And I was stunned when like half the people in the room were crying. And I was like, what is going on? People were having like a spiritual experience, understanding math with meaning rather than math with no meaning. And math with no meaning is what we all learned in junior high and high school, which is like math with no meaning is just information. But math with meaning is literally divine communication. And so I felt like I was acting as a conduit to helping people see something that they've all been acquainted with their whole lives, but maybe didn't have the relationship with it, or maybe even hated it because, they learned it in a way that was devoid of that meaning. And so I think what I started doing is I started sharing my work. And I wasn't sharing because I wanted to get known for it. It wasn't like, okay, this is my target market segment. I'm going to go after this segment and I'm going to look at this age demographic and try to go. No, it was nothing like that. The only reason why I started sharing it was because I felt that in order for me to embed this knowledge, so I felt like it was coming in, I had to record it, and start writing books. So I started writing books. I've just now finished my 8th book in the last 4 years. And so the first of these books is a book called Polymath, as you know, and it's done really well. It's still at the top of the charts on Amazon. It has been for the last 4 years in all of math, which is really stunning to me. Never would believe that would have happened. But I started posting pictures of my geometry and artwork that was coming off of these channelings, right? They were literally, that's the best way I could describe it, as a channeling. Mm-hmm. And I would just let it flow through me, and then I would draw it and people would see it. They go, you got to publish this. So I started sharing it on social media. And then next thing I know, I've got like hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, what in the heck? How did this happen? And it was only so that I could embed it more within myself. It wasn't because I was trying to get something or get value for something. It was simply, I felt like I had to share it authentically in order for me to learn it. You've probably heard the old saying, right? The teacher always learns the most. And so for me, the sharing was part of that learning process.
And so take me through how you would enter into these channeling sessions. Because as an artist or a creative, I understand that feeling of, oh, spirit's moving through me right now. As I'm writing this poem, you have numbers, I have letters, but that is still a expression of some form of life force moving through me, some sort of spirit. I do feel like a vessel in those moments. And I'm curious how you would very practically set it up. Did you write a candle and start a seance, or did you have a old fashioned and a cigar? Like what did it look like for you to go into that?
For me, it was more like memories in the beginning. So in 2014, I was at Harvard Business School, and I had a group of people there with me. I was leading a whole course of study that were my old professors from Harvard Business School, and it was a program called the Executive Management Program for Physicians. And I put this whole curriculum together. I was super excited about it. And it was the same time that I was founding a new investment bank. It was one of the companies in my portfolio. And interestingly, I had to do a FINRA application for it, which is like the regulatory body that regulates investment banks. And so I had to have a guy come and do a fingerprint on me. And so he came to do the fingerprints, and he was rude to my business partner, Vic, who you know very well. Yep. And he was rude to Vic, Vic was rude to him, excuse me. And so I apologized to the guy. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, my business partner, Vic, sometimes he's from the caste system in India. And he was sort of irritated on something else. And so he was a little bit gruff with you. I apologize for that. And he looked at me and he said, no, that's not why that happened. I said, why did it happen? He said, it's because of his past life karma. And I was like, what? And so I'm like, this is the guy who's coming to do my fingerprints, as a notary. And he goes, this is just my day job to meet the people I'm supposed to meet. And he said, I have something for you as well. I said, well, wait, you have to tell me what was his past life. He goes, oh, he cleaned the elephant cages. And instantly in my mind's eye, I was taken straight to his apartment that I'd been to many times in New York City, in Trump Tower. And the place is full of elephant photographs. His house was full of elephant photographs. And I remember asking him before that as well, saying, what's it with the elephants? And he's like, they're the most gentle creatures, right? And he's like, he loves elephants. And he worships Ganesh as well. Mm-hmm. So I was like, whoa, this is kind of trippy. This guy just pulled that one right out of the ether, right? So he goes, I have something for you. And he pulled out all these photographs. They were from like 1930s and 1940s. And he says, pick the one that you recognize. And I happen to have a photographic memory. That's how I remember things. I have a harder time remembering what someone tells me. I have a much easier time seeing the picture of it. Like I remember studying Korean language or Japanese or Chinese. I can remember the page numbers even of where to find things. Mm-hmm. And this has always been like one of my superpowers, is that photographic memory. And I looked at these photographs and I couldn't place where I had seen one of the photographs before, but I just knew I had seen it before, but not in this life. And so he says, take this photograph. And I grabbed it, and it was a photograph of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, giving a speech in 1942. And he said, do you recognize this? I said, yeah, I do. It was a speech somewhere in Boston area. It was like a stump speech for a mayor candidate. And I said, I don't know why I recognize it, but I recognize it. And he said, keep the photograph. So I took the photograph, didn't think anything more of it, went back to my desk where there was a classroom setting going on, and this very famous Harvard Business School professor, her name is Frances Fry, she's a lesbian professor there, who's like super militant. Like, she will kick your ass if you don't listen in class. And I opened my notebook, and it was a very boring subject matter. It was production operations management. So I opened my notebook, and I cannot listen to her lecture. And I start just writing out page after page after page of advanced math and physics. And I was like, what is this? And I'm thinking I'm having like this creative burst or something, right?
But did you know advanced math and physics? Like, is that a subject?
I was always good at math, and I was always good at physics, but
Okay.
I'd never had this kind of clarity of thought before.
So it was new math.
Totally new.
Okay.
And so to the point where I started, I got one of my my research assistants who worked on my team. I said, look, we're going to file patents on this stuff. So I've filed tons of patents. I have close to, like 80 some odd, almost 100 patents now. And I said, we have to see if any of this has prior art. Prior art means has someone else, has any other inventor ever come up with similar concepts, and then you have to cite them in your publications. And if you don't, then you can get like downgraded for things like inequitable conduct. You didn't cite references, so you need to thoroughly research an area before you can claim an invention in that area, right? And you can't patent things that are inherent to nature, even if it's a new discovery. You can't patent discoveries. You can patent methods and businesses and products and apparatus that comes off of those discoveries, right? So that's predominantly what I was trying to do. And I had no idea. I didn't even connect for many months, having received this photograph from 1942 and then having this spontaneous memory stream coming in. So that was the first time. And then about every 3, 6, 9 weeks, I would get these downloads where literally I maybe would start on a Thursday or something, and I couldn't do anything else for like 3 days.
And so it would be math. Math would be coming through you when you say you got a download. And now, are you saying that it felt as if you were channeling this person in the photo?
I wasn't even sure then. So what happened was I told my research assistant, his name, and now he's a CEO of one of the companies in our portfolio. His name is Matt Case. And I said, Matt, go and see if anyone has come up with any of this stuff. And I had just done something on the periodic table of elements that I renamed the periodic wave of elements. And it presented the periodic table of elements as a wave relationship of sine cosine, and it looked like a snake even. And I had more elements on there than what we know about. And I said, has anyone done anything like this? And I had all the frequencies and all the math of each of the elements too. And he comes back and he says, the only guy I found anything on like this is this guy named Walter Russell. And so I looked him up and I was like, whoa, this is weird, strangely familiar. And I find out that my office in New York City was his office in New York City. Like literally the exact same office in the exact same building and the exact same floor, right? And he was partners with Nikola Tesla. And I knew who Tesla was. And I felt something very eerily familiar about Walter and Walter's work. He was a polymath in the 20th century. He died in 1963. And he established a university and everything called the University of Science and Philosophy. I actually went to speak there at their homecoming 2 years ago. And, I started like researching him more to understand. I had no idea. And I found out later that he was actually at that event with Franklin Roosevelt. The reason he was is because he was the sculptor for the White House. In addition to all of his other polymathic pursuits, which was across music and illustrative art and painting and physics and cosmology. I mean, he wrote, and he's becoming well known now. It's funny, we're talking about this. I've never talked about this before on any podcast.
This is going to be a different podcast.
And it's funny because he's coming into public awareness right now, big time, because of Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard's podcast with Joe Rogan was highlighting predominantly the work of Walter Russell and all the stuff he was talking about, the table of elements, as well as gravity and electromagnetism and all these aspects. There are a number of books that Walter wrote. One of them was called The Universal One. The other one is called The Secret of Light. They're most well known, but there's Atomic Suicide. There's also The Divine Iliad. There's all these other things. He had a 39-day illumination when he was just around 50 years old. And this is when his life totally expanded. And then he became this super polymath. He had already done a lot of things. He established the first cooperative ownership model in New York City for real estate, which is dominant now in New York.
How old were you when this happened?
I was about, when all this started, I was 45, 46.
45, 46. Mm-hmm. What is it around that age, do you think? Because we hear these stories, and you just referred to Walter Russell, and right around the same age, that's exploding for him. Because you said he really had this thing happen at around 50.
It was like 49, I think.
49, but my guess is that he was probably experiencing something the years leading up to it. So
for sure.
What do you think it is about that age? Because I'm almost there. Let me know.
I think it relates directly to the North Node in astrology.
Got it.
So and a lot of people, I was never even familiar with what the term South Node and North Node.
Can you explain it for people listening?
Sure. So the South Node is related to your immediate past life, right, in the reincarnation cycle. So it's what you came into this world with. And my South Node is Virgo. So all the things you can think of, all the repressions and all the positives that come along with being a Virgo is definitely tied directly to the beginning and first half of the arc of my life. Mm-hmm. So as I get into my mid-40s is when you start to transition to your North Node. So for Virgo, and you could see it, all my career choices and everything I was doing was very much in the material world. Virgo is very grounded. It's very material in a sense. And it's also got repressions around things like sexuality and the virgin. And, for the last 2,000 years, we've had a shadow of Virgo because we've been in Pisces, right? And Pisces is the two fish swimming opposite directions. The separation between spirituality and science is one good example of that. But masculine and feminine, we could do light and dark. All these things about the duality nature of the world and the separation of the world are wrapped up into the last 2,000 years of the Piscaeon, as I call it, the aeon of Pisces. And so we go through this backwards precession of equinox. We go forward in procession, we go backwards in precession. That's why we went from Pisces, now we're in Aquarius. Mm-hmm. So the shadow consciousness for the last 2,000 years was Virgo because it's the exact opposite sign. So you cannot have one zodiac sign without having the impact of its opposite sign also. Mm-hmm. Its opposite sign being Virgo, so therefore you see it in the imagery of the things that we have in society. Our veneration of the Virgin concept, right? The Virgin Mary was the beginning of this last cycle, right? And before Jesus, everything with reference to Jesus was always a reference to the blood of the Lamb, right? Blood of the Lamb. Isaiah always talking about the Lamb of God. But then Jesus comes, he says, no, I shall make you fishermen of men. Directly related to Pisces. Mm-hmm. His mother was the Immaculate Conception, right? The virgin birth. Mm-hmm. So we venerate these things and we created this separation between science and spirituality and all these dualities that existed for the last 2,000 years. So I believe that fundamentally as we move in, so for me, I moved in my mid-40s, I started my transit into my North Node. Mm. So my North Node is Pisces. And what is my role? So I went from being a pharma CEO, which is something that would be venerated in the world of Virgo. Right?
And now hated.
Right? And then I transition into Pisces, which is a wisdom teacher. Mm-hmm. So my North Node and where I find my flow in the world is to go into the wisdom teaching. So
it's your creativity and the way that you approach these downloads and what comes through you and that sort of thing. You just spoke to, and everyone listening can hear even the level of understanding you have around astrology. You also have that around ancient texts. You also have that around Shakespeare. I mean, you have that in so many areas. And I'm curious how much it plays into your decision-making. as a creative, are you just going intuitively and then ultimately letting those things just kind of sit in the subconscious? Or do you consult your chart for major decisions about what to do? Do you look at ancient texts in relation to different things? I'm curious how much you actually consciously operate based off of these sorts of things.
More and more. Well, to be honest, I mean, because I realized that we're in a matrix. The matrix is of our own creation. And the clues to the game in the matrix on what we've decided for ourselves, that everything is already chosen and set. But helping us understand it along the way are numerology, gene keys, human design. They're all there. They're all correct. They're all there to help us to process and understand what we're moving through, when we're moving through it. And you could think of this as just the backdrop of this cycle of time, where it's like the set has changed. I mean, you went to acting school, right? So it's like you're in a play and the play has a set change. And we're just going through the set change right now. And that's exactly what we're transiting through. When we went from the two fish swimming opposite directions that are definitely not in resonance to now we have two lines that are, the symbol of water in Egyptian hieroglyphics, and it's pronounced mem. That's what water is. And they're both in resonance with each other. Right? They're lockstep. So it's a sea change in how our perception related to our experience in this world is. So as we move through this and we go into our North Node, then all of a sudden you're no longer as tethered to the tropical zodiac. So until you're in your North Node, you are in your tropical zodiac.
And for you, that is it for everyone? It's right in the mid 40s is when we transition.
It's usually it could be as early as 30s. It depends on where you are in your cycle and where you are in your path. Everything is set as part of this. It doesn't have to be in your mid 40s. I've seen people go into their North Nodes in their 30s.
So, and is it?
It's definitely something after Saturn return.
Is it something that you can see in your chart? Like you'll know when you're in it, or is it actually more an energetic thing?
To be honest, I didn't even know I was in it because I didn't even know what the North Node was until I didn't even realize what the North Node was until probably 4 years ago.
So it's interesting. So I started working with, I think it's called a doji or a doja in India. And it's astrology, but at a whole different level. And the idea of working with very specific planets to harness the light energy from these planets and different things. And you'll see they wear different rings, specific rings for specific fingers with specific planets. And the rings have no back because they need to be in touch with your skin, and they collect the light of that particular planet into your skin. It's a whole interesting thing. So I just started working with this gentleman, and he looked at my chart and he said to me, and you've known my journey for a little bit, but he said to me, you have a more complex chart than average with a lot of suffering. He's like,
how'd that make you feel?
It made me feel very seen is how it made me feel. And he goes, it's as if your planet has been being hit by meteors for a long period of time. And he told me exactly when it started.
Wow.
And the date. And then he says, and this is when it ends. And it's January, I think it ends approximately January 8th, 2026.
Yeah, so that's about...
And so I'll just be turning 41. And if you look at my astrology chart, Pluto has basically hit, I think, 7 of my planets over the course of the last 10 years.
Wow.
And so Pluto's hit everything. It just left my sun for 3 months and then retrograded back onto my sun where it is now. And then he's like, this cycle that you're in of this period of intense suffering, taking a lot of hits, ends January 8th, 2026. And so when you're speaking about the North Node, to me, there's a resonance of coming out of that into that. And then that lines up.
Do you know what your North Node is?
Taurus.
Wow. Okay.
I believe Taurus.
Whoa.
I'm almost positive.
I think we've talked about this before. I think you're right. Wow. That's really interesting. That means your South Node is Scorpio, which has a lot related to relationships, a lot related to...
Come on. Really? Me?
I was just talking to our mutual friend, Shervine, on the way here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
And we were talking about you, of course, in a loving way, of course.
Okay. What did you say? All right, family, I wanted to take a moment and remind you that if you are interested in the Artistic Entrepreneur Incubator, I encourage you to check the link in the description of this video because we are filling it up. If you are someone who has the heart of an artist and the mind of an entrepreneur, and you have a knowing that you could be great, you just need the community, the mentorship, the structure, the invitation into a space for you to actualize your greatness. If that is you, then right now, click the link and make sure that you take the journey with us.
And I
here
said,
we go.
oh yeah.
Here we go.
The
projections of the two guys who need me as the mirror, actually.
And who love you.
Yeah.
Yes, and who love you. But no, we determined that all three of us are romantics.
Oh yeah, deeply. Absolutely.
All three of us are romantic, for sure.
We go about it in three very different ways.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's interesting because I think, a lot of the shadow characteristics, we're all connected, the three of us also, to Scorpio. Mm-hmm. Right? It's my opposite sign. I'm Taurus. Mm-hmm. Right? Shervin is actually, if you really look at us, he's Ophiuchus. If you look at the true zodiac, right, which would include the deacon, he's Ophiuchus and I'm Orion. And you, mm-hmm. right, you being in that north-south node relationship mm-hmm. is like bouncing in between those two aspects.
Well, the darkness, like relational, like deeply emotional, all of that, like angst for me. And then Taurus to me is like very abundant and very building. And so what's interesting is also gene keys. You mentioned gene keys. Mm-hmm. I have a really high number of line 6s, which only unlock as you approach 50. Mm-hmm. And at 50 years old. And so what Richard Rudd, the mm-hmm. founder of Gene Keys, said to me was, mm-hmm. because of how many line 6s you have, I want you to know that your life basically completely blossoms later half of life. Yeah. And so just like from the astrologer who said this thing to me and gave me a date, to the North Node thing with Taurus, to like my line 6s and Gene Keys, I feel more and more of that. And when I think about creativity, there's a way of dancing with these cosmic forces that I think we inherently do sometimes. And then there are other people who are so disconnected from it and are trying to force their way and almost trying to swim upstream against cosmic forces. And so I'm curious if you've always had some level of spiritual connection to how you create, even when you were creating business, or like, was it intuitive? Was it, or were you very much in a masculine do, follow structures and templates and you know what works, and then it later unlocked kind of the feminine creative channeling aspect?
I think I was always connected spiritually in some way, shape, or form. And at times I was conscious of it and times I was less conscious of it, but I never abandoned it. I mean, I was a missionary when I was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. So to say that I was disconnected spiritually never really happened in my life, where I was truly disconnected. I always felt like there was a higher meaning, a higher purpose to life, without a doubt. And for me, I think, by the way, I do see you. I've always been able to see the future. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I've always been able to see the future. Mm-hmm. And even before I went down the spiritual path, I had this ability and I could like remote view the future. And then after I had my spiritual awakening, I could remote view the past, even where I was not present. Mm. And what I see with you is I see you get everything you want. Mm. That's part of the moving into Taurus. Mm-hmm. And it will be more abundance for you. And it's also going to be more logos, right? It's more of a balanced logos, pathos relationship you're going to have. So that's why you're attracted to understanding the math of things and the science behind things. You are attracted to it. Like you have the aqueducts inside of you for that transition for you. And I see you, being the father you want to become, which I think is beautiful, right? I definitely see that happening for you. And I think it's going to happen kind of along that timeline, through your 40s. And it's going to transition you in so many profound ways. And it's almost like, be careful what you wish for. You'll actually get it, which is pretty awesome. And one of the things that I think we all go through to a certain extent is I didn't realize until very recently that we have to learn in this world of duality through opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing, and a big epiphany that I had very recently, and I don't know if I sent you that 24 precepts of universal mind thing. And
yeah, I read it. I read the whole thing.
You read the whole thing. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a section in there where I said, you learn, and I woke up in the middle of the night and just channeled that. That was like,
Robert's the kind of friend, just so everyone listening, Robert's the kind of friend that will at 2 a.m. send you screenshots of a like dissertation on the 24 precepts of meaning of life and be like, hey, just wrote this. So give me some feedback what do you think?
Totally. And you wrote back. Thank you.
You're welcome. I gave you a voice note.
You did. But the thing is that I realized in that we learn through opposites. So what do I mean by learning through opposites? I think it comes back to answering your question also on creativity, is that we are here, each of us trying to find our most authentic expression and be okay with it. It's not that the rest of the world is against us having that authentic expression. It's just that we think, and we have our own hangups on believing that maybe the world won't accept that authentic expression, whatever that authentic expression is. And so if I'm here to learn unconditional love, for example, then I will be bombarded in this matrix of mind with the experience of conditional love over and over and over again, until I no longer judge negatively the concept of conditional love. Once I finally can not be triggered by seeing a situation of conditional love, or not be triggered when seeing a condition of betrayal, that's when I finally have learned unconditionality of love.
Well, it's kind of the same idea that what we're seeing is actually what's not being absorbed, right?
Yes.
With light. So
yes, it's like the absorption versus reflection.
The light you are is actually not the light you're letting off. It's just like this weird opposite thing that's constantly happening. The colors that we think we're seeing are actually the reflection of what's not being absorbed. So that idea, when we fractal it out and say we live in this hologram where, as within, so without, even that concept, saying that what we see out in the world is actually truly a reflection of what's not being absorbed. Yeah,
it's funny because I used to think, okay, and the hero's journey is a story of realizing that it's not the outer journey, it's the inner journey. Mm-hmm. Well, what I've realized now is that the outer journey is the inner journey, because it's all a reflection of what's inside of you. Mm-hmm. So literally every person you meet, every circumstance you encounter, every place you go is actually a representation somehow, some way of what's latent inside of you that you're unaware of.
And so I want to bring it back to my question about whether it was old fashions and cigars, or if it was, shirtless sun tanning on your deck. Like, what was the way that you physically got yourself primed for creative downloads, and like, how has that evolved over the years?
I think for me, I always felt like it started with the open heart. So it was because that's been the biggest shift, I think, in me. I've always been logos oriented. I think what really shifted in me was my openness to expand my emotional state. I was definitely one of these guys. I think my preparation work was really learning how to feel the emotions that I had not felt.
Well, that was the conversation we had in Egypt.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation. We sat outside. It was like under the stars.
Been inside the pyramids all night long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you had just gone through you hadn't gone through your breakup yet.
No.
It was right before.
Yeah.
It was like very, very imminent after that. And we sat outside and we talked about like feeling emotions. And I remember feeling very impacted profoundly by listening to your poem, right, on You Are Enough. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, because that's exactly what I was going through at the time. So you were a reflection of something inside of me, like a wisdom keeper inside of me that needed to come out to my conscious mind to teach that wisdom to me.
Well, you and I have always spoken to this, which is, so we both go to Egypt for the first time in October 2017, night of the Super Harvest Blood Moon. We have profound experiences. And I won't put words into your mouth, but we've had this conversation where it felt as if we both downloaded the same code in that day. And then we expressed it masculine, feminine. Yeah. You expressed it mathematically, and I expressed it through poetry and an emotion. And suddenly we both like when we reconnected again and you invited me onto the next Egypt trip years later, what you said is you got to give a talk that was different than every other talk on that original trip and people were crying. I gave a talk on your trip that was different than every other talk and people were crying.
Yeah.
And it was just as if it was as if we had just gone on this journey, learning the same things through these two different languages, but of the same thing and expressing them. And we both got to see social media explode after that. We both got to see, like, there was just a really interesting parallel that we ran. And I find that for myself, I have since then really been managing and learning how to balance my inner artist and my inner entrepreneur. And that's inner feminine, inner masculine, and finding ways to harmonize those two and optimize the union of those two. And so a lot of my question when I'm asking you about your creative process and you say it's about the open heart, I'm like, amazing. And do you put music on? Do you like, I don't know, like eat a certain meal that like really helps you or those sorts of things? Because there are times that I know how to prime my system for additional creativity, but there are also times where I feel as if I am not optimizing for that creative flow. And as someone who is constantly seeming to channel new information, new mathematics, I'm wondering how you keep yourself primed for that.
So I think one of the methods I think is actually a really important one is drawing geometry as a meditative practice. So the way to represent, because our brains are not hard drive storage units, they're antenna. How to balance that antenna is the whole story of how to be able to get that creative access flow in this divine state of source creation, like flowing through you. So for me, what I found is that the circle and the square represent this exact topic, right? The circle is the divine feminine, the square is the divine masculine. And it's been a long-term problem. How can you balance exactly and have the exact same perimeter and circumference or area of the circle and the area of the square without any measurement at all? So drawing that is a representation of that achievement of balance within. So I had to learn, and I teach it in my book, Philomath, how to meditate and how to start this process of drawing with no measurements, a perfect circle and a perfect square that are supposed to be, in theory, impossible. You have to make a mental leap and realize that impossible just is missing the apostrophe, making it I'm possible. So for me, that's what I do. I will literally sit down, turn on the music. Yes, I do turn on, Beethoven, Mozart.
Sir Mix-a-Lot. We were talking
Sir
about
Mix-a-Lot. Yeah, it's like... I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Yeah, you other brothers can't deny.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
When a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and that round thing in your face, you get
sprung.
There you go. See?
There you go. I even know the words. So the thing is that I sit down and I listen to there's a song by Beethoven called Pathétique. And I listen to that one. It's the one that goes da da dun dun da 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 da. You probably heard it before. Yeah, exactly. And that gets me in this state, and then I draw the circle and square, and that's where I usually start from. Then I start channeling. It's like literally titrating this antenna. I do it, I set intention around it and everything. But sometimes I can continue that as well, just like watching Netflix or something in the background, but I'm in this full-on meditative channeling state, and it can last for many, many hours.
So how the hell do you find the time? Because you do so many things. You have so many companies. You have so much stuff that you're doing. And yet you're sending me late night messages of these crazy things you're writing. And then you're drawing geometry for several hours. And meanwhile, like you're doing so many things. I actually am curious how you manage your time and create the space. How do you prioritize what needs to get done?
First of all, I don't really think so much anymore. I used to have a lot of task lists and stuff. That was when I very much was in my Virgo stage, and pharma CEO and boss kind of guy. Now I just let it come to me. I don't stress as much anymore about making a mistake or wondering if I made the right choice. I just allow the universe to express through me. And I believe the one divides itself into the many simply for the joy of perceiving itself through our unique eyes of perception and perspective. And that allows the one to increase empathy and wisdom because it can literally walk in our shoes by observing itself through our eyes.
Mm-hmm. But there are people listening to this right now who are single moms who have 2 jobs to provide for their kids, or husbands who are trying to pay the rent and working 9 to 5s, but have big visions or whatever. And they have a creative spark in them. They have a vision for what they believe is possible for their lives. And they're actually trying to manage time. Like, where do they find the time to be a dad and do this? Where do I find the time to lead all the things that I'm doing and still create my art? Like, the actual time thing, you are someone that I've always just admired how much you do, and you leverage people really well. That's something that I know that you do. And so maybe that's the answer, but I'm just curious how you create the space.
I don't think that's the main thing. I think the main thing is reframing what you believe is possible. I think that's the whole key to life, candidly. I mean, I think we're here to learn how to love and how to be loved. And along the way, we get to experience this incredible game of life. And the way I see it is that we have to unlearn what we've learned. It's like the Luke Skywalker moment, right? Mm-hmm. When Yoda pulls the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp and Luke Skywalker walks and says, "I can't believe it, Master. I can't believe it." And he goes, "And that is why you fail." Mm-hmm. Right? We have learned through our own conditioning biases. It's not someone else's fault. We chose it all. I believe we chose it all. Every experience that we have, we chose it all. And so when we start to realize that we actually chose it all, that we are not only the actor on the stage, we might feel like an actor and that's a pretty doomed life, right? Or you could start to realize I'm actually the scriptwriter in a higher sense. I'm just the dimensionally limited avatar of this higher self. But if I raise my consciousness, I could actually realize and be in the shoes of the producer, the director, the playwright, the everything. Mm-hmm. It's not separate from me. So when you get into that mindset, then all of a sudden you can start to think and realize, what are the things that I believe limit my expansion? Is it time? I can't do something because I don't have enough time. There's just not enough time in the day. I've got too much stuff going on. And then that becomes a reality for you. What you believe is what your reality is.
Do you encounter things that you don't want to do?
Like, all the time.
Right. And so how do you move through with all the responsibilities, the people that you employ, all of that stuff, and you hit those moments where you're like, I really am finding resistance because I don't really want to do this thing, whether it's whatever it is. How do you relate to that very human aspect?
There are certain things that I just don't want to do. Yep. And so I try to find ways for other people to do those things.
Yeah.
People that like doing those things. There are people that like doing the things that I don't like to do. Mm-hmm. And if I can find those people to do those things, that makes me happy.
How much has that been impacted by having financial success? Hugely, right? Yeah. So, because you and I both have the ability to employ people to do things that we don't want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So you've been financially successful for such a long time. Can you put yourself in the position of maybe some of the listeners or people watching this who, like, I want to give something that's
tangible
to how you've gotten to where you've gotten to, because you're at a place that most people are aspiring to. And quite honestly, most people will never reach in this lifetime in terms of financial success, in terms of consciousness and the way that you create, the level at which you create. And you and I are very similar in the sense that there's a level of sort of Neo in the Matrix, like, oh yeah, I'm just going to download this information and do this thing now. I'm going to produce music now. You and I both had that same thing. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to produce music now. And I've had friends reflect to me, anything that I say I'm going to do, they just assume that I will and I'll do it well.
Yeah.
And so you're the exact same way, but you got here and you were blessed with a brain and intelligence, all these things, charisma. But like, for people that aren't there yet and can't hire those people or whatever, where's the starting place for
You know what? My first job, I detasseled corn in Nebraska when I was 14. It's basically like working the fields. And I would go every morning at 4:00 in the morning all summer long. So, it's like chop wood and carry water type thing. It wasn't that it was something that overnight I could just like say, okay, now I've got people that work for me and now I can have them do the things I don't want to do. The reality is there were a lot, and it's like the iceberg. People only see the tip of the iceberg outside the water, but all the work that went into that underneath is what people just don't see. And frankly, most don't even want to see. So, but for me, what I had to realize from the very beginning, I guess the thing that was very different about me, I used to think that I always looked at the world and that everyone else must think like I think. I used to think that like, well, doesn't so-and-so see it like this as well?
Yeah.
No. It took me a long time to realize that the facts that I thought I was accumulating in life of what is reality were merely facets. It wasn't F-A-C-T, it was F-A-C-E-T. And facets of a larger prism of truth. So my whole life has, in a way, in the back half of it in particular, become a series of deconstruction of what I'd believed, because our consciousness and our wisdom can only expand to the volume of the cage of our belief system.
Yeah.
So whatever you believe is the maximum, and that could be how much time you have in a day, how many resources you have at your disposal, whatever those things are. If you come from a mindset of thinking what I don't have and what I need, you will most definitely have that. Why? Because you will attract everything you judge until you no longer judge everything you attracted. You are creating a self-perpetual process of, I have to work hard. I have to kill myself. I have limited resources. So what you have to learn how to do is deconstruct this way of thinking, change your belief system, expand the cage of your belief system.
How?
First, you have to know that it's even possible. So as an example, people used to say to me, my mom, okay, I love my mom, but my mom was always one who would tell me, oh, you can't do that. She would literally tell me, you can't do that. So I realized that one of the big motivations in my life for so long was to prove her wrong. And then she would say things to me like, God bless her, love her to death, but she would say, oh, son, you got all A's and 1 A minus. Next time, if you get all A's and no A minuses, then I'll really love you. So this conditionality of love, and it's not her fault, I chose the path. What was it that I wanted to learn? It's when you start taking total responsibility for your life and your entire existence, and you realize that nothing happened to you, everything was happening for and through you. That is the biggest shift. And I used to say, when people would say to me, oh, you don't have any training in doing this. My first job was a cardiac tech. I didn't know jack diddly about being a cardiac tech. I had to go learn how to read EKGs and everything. Let's be real. And all of a sudden, I would just say, well, I'll just do it. I'll learn. And I would make mistakes. Same thing happened when I learned the Korean language. I had to learn Korean at 19 years old. And everyone else we went to the airport, we're flying to Korea. I go to the check-in counter and I'm trying to ask for my boarding pass in Korean, and all the other American guys are sort of laughing and snickering at me because I'm just hacking the language up badly. But 3 months later, I was fluent. So I didn't give a damn about what other people thought, and I didn't let their limited way of thinking impact my expansive thinking.
Right. I mean, no, you can't give a damn about what other people think and say Jack Diddley.
Jack Diddley. Well, exactly.
You can't care what people think if you're going to say Jack Diddley.
That's right.
Just drop a Jack Diddley.
That's right.
Out there.
Well, I was going to say two shits, but you see my point, right? As I just didn't believe when someone would tell me I couldn't do something because of that thing that my mother, instilled in me, where I had to prove her wrong in a way.
Well, you are speaking to something, and I know this story about you, but you went through sort of a dark night of the soul, and as a way of reconstructing reality, because everything was so crumbling around you, basically said, okay, does 1 + 1 actually equal 2? Yeah. And started reconstructing math from the ground up to build what do I believe? You reconstructed your reality mathematically, and
I just want to differentiate. This is not the Terrence Howard 1 × 1 = 2.
No, that's different. But going back through fundamentals of mathematics to understand what you actually believe. And for me, My version of that, because you're talking about, we have to actually deconstruct what we think we know and what we believe, and then construct one that is more supportive. And for me, what that looked like was 2012, I was going through my dark night of the soul, where everything that I thought I had any form of identity around, my career, my physical health, my financial bank account, all of it gone. Literally from, I had to write I signed a bad contract with an acting manager. And in order to let me out of the contract, he had me actually print out my bank account statement, write a check for every dollar I had to let me out of the contract. And so after years of struggling as an actor, this guy who had misled me into this contract, and I signed the bad one, I was at an actual complete zero. Starting over. And so then there was a car accident. I needed surgery. I had migraines from a concussion. It was just a whole thing. And out of pure desperation, I went, I don't think I know how to do this thing called life. I don't actually think, I'd been so successful early on, homecoming king, academic scholarships, like all of these things.
I saw the picture of you homecoming king. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it for me, having that early success, quote unquote, in varsity sports and all of these things, great, amazing. And I thought I had life figured out. And then coming to LA, pursuing an acting career, putting more effort into something than I'd ever put into anything in my life and not seeing the fruit of it. And then getting rejection after rejection. And then having this year in 2012 led me to a point of going, I might not actually have this figured out the way I thought I did. And that pure desperation and that crack in my belief system led me to ayahuasca. And ayahuasca was my spiritual awakening and blasted everything open. And from that moment, I had to recreate my belief systems. And this was 2013, January 2013. And then a few years later, I once again have to do that when I have the repressed memory of my sexual abuse come back, when I, for 25 years, didn't remember it. And suddenly I had to go back through and look at my relationship to women, my relationship to men, my relationship to money, my relationship to my own self-worth, my relationship to my parents, my relationship to just not feeling safe on the planet. And I had to reconstruct what I believe by looking at, okay, what do I believe here? Why do I believe that? Is that even what I choose? And I had to rebuild myself for years and years and years. And it wasn't mathematically, it was through a more traditional kind of personal development of emotions. I followed my emotions and the somatics of my body. And that was a period of time of at least 4 or 5 years of truly rebuilding my belief system from the ground up.
Wow. That's, I think we often discount and we think that the framework around our thinking and our experience of our world is sort of a fixed and given thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like the old statement, right? If you don't like if you don't like the game, then change the game. But we don't think that you can change the game. Mm-hmm. But actually that is the thing that we can change. And it makes everything easier once we change the framework of our belief system, because that's actually, if you start thinking everything in my world around me, what are my assumptions, my core assumptions of that world? Mm-hmm. And that list of core assumptions, whether they're conscious or subconscious, actually create the limitations in the world around you. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean by the volume of the cage of your belief system. Mm-hmm. So how do you constantly move the boundary further and further out from you of your belief system so that you can expand more into it? Mm-hmm. And it's through, I believe, changing and reframing how we see the world. You want to change your world, then be the change you want to see in the world, right? If you want a world with more compassion and a world with more love, then be the love and be the compassion. If you feel like there's wars in your world all around you, then address the wars within. What are the things about yourself that are at war, that's showing up in the world around you as war? Nothing is separate from you. Everything is directly related to your emotional state. And every emotion you've ever had but never felt, and every word you wanted to say but never said, has to be said and has to be felt.
Now, do you find that reflection in geometry? Because for you, geometry was the way that you felt like it really activates your channel. And for me, poetry is that, right? It's mm-hmm. my version of geometry is to sit down with my blank page and write a poem and let that open my channel. And sometimes I'll write some lines and it's just kind of getting the junk out, but then something starts to flow. And I'm curious because poetry for me is more obvious for how it's reflecting what I believe inside of myself. And I'm curious if you have that same thing when you're drawing geometry.
Yes, definitely. I mean, look, we can think of it like this. So the right temporal lobe of our, if we're right-handed, is where we process music. The left temporal lobe, so exact same part of the brain, but just opposite side, is where we process mathematics and arithmetic. And then the center of the brain is where we process geometry. So it's exactly around, there's not a coincidence that people that go through spiritual awakenings and philosophical shifts and changes, whether it's Plato or Pythagoras, who were also philosophers anciently, they're always geometers. It's because that lights up the zone of your brain that's right around your pineal and pituitary gland. Mm-hmm. It's where we also process language. So it's, you could say that geometry is just the nexus between the abstract form of music, which is math, and then, the sound-based form of music, which we would then consider would be, music is just the geometry we're experiencing with our ears.
And poetry being the language, which is still processing
and
the spot
poetry
of the geometry.
being, that's right. So, and actually you said earlier, like, well, I do my processing through poetry and through words, but the words themselves, the building blocks of words are all based on number. So there's something called gematria, and I know you've heard about gematria, but what is very interesting, if you go back in ancient Greek history or go back and look at the alphabets, right? And the word alphabet is simply aleph bet. Aleph is bull, right? It's ox. Mm-hmm. And bet is house, so the house of the bull. It's a reference to the house of Osiris. And the Taurus, word right? Alphabet, yes, it's Taurus, right, exactly. And the bull is the reference to Osiris because he's Orion constellation is in Taurus. It's one of the three constellations in Taurus. So it's Eridanus and Auriga and Orion. But when you realize that one of the names of the Great Pyramid is Bull Mountain was also the house of Osiris, then you start to realize, wait a minute, alphabet is just a reference to the Great Pyramid. Wow, the house of Osiris, effectively. So, but if you look at Hebrew, you look at Phoenician, and you look at Greek, all of these languages did not have written numbers. Their numbers were the letters. So imagine in the Greek language right now, every word anciently always had a dual meaning as its anagram. So aeon, which can mean I am, right? And also means like gods, etc. Aeon backwards is Noe. Noe is I think. I think, therefore I am. And it's just the two opposite directions of the same word. But then there's gematria within it because the Greek language, that's what they use for their numbers with their letters. So imagine how we would look differently at each of our letters when we read words if we realize that at the underlying root of it, and all our languages come in some way, shape, or form related in Indo-European languages, right? They all have a numerical foundation. They're all gematria. So there's both a numerical meaning. So it's almost like speaking to a whole other dimension of poetry.
Right.
You have a whole other dimension of poetry that could be explored from your consciousness, because consciousness can read this. Your higher self, you're a dimensional limited avatar, but your higher self knew all of it. So it'd be fascinating to do a gematria study on your poetry, for example, because then I'd be like, whoa, there's a whole mathematical meaning embedded in this that you encrypted from your higher self for someone to figure out at some point in time in the future. And maybe that someone is actually you. I have found so many things that I've encrypted to myself through time. Just stuff I made 4 years ago is coming back to me now as like, what the, wow.
And do you think, because I had a conversation with a rabbi about this not too long ago, gematria, and do you think, can it be done with any, can you create any numerical value? So A1, B2, C3.
What you're describing, that's simple gematria.
Right.
Right. But there are more complex gematria forms, but they all somehow foot. The Hebrew gematria, the Greek gematria, they all somehow foot. And so when you look at the King James Version of the Bible, for example, it was made by a bunch of cryptographers who were the same people that were Shakespeare, right? So it's Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, John Dee, right? And Edward Kelly, and Kit Marlowe. So all of these people together collectively were Shakespeare. And so they left themselves encryptions through time. Like literally they left encryptions to themselves within their lifetimes and then beyond. And so they could start to see this invisible hand of a source consciousness that there's no way they could even think through all of these aspects. How could they even contemplate how to put all of it in the confined mind that we have?
I think you and I should take a ton of mushrooms and then I'll write a poem that is encrypted with your math.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's what we should do.
We could do a simple gematria. It's just do a simple gematria on your poetry. I guarantee you, we will not be surprised when we see there is an absolute other message in it numerically.
All right. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to take a trip. We got to go to like Fiji or something to do it though.
Okay, well, there you go. Of course.
Of course. Why would we do it here?
Of course.
So I have, as we land the plane here, I have a program called the Artistic Entrepreneur. And the idea is that for me, that inner artist, inner entrepreneur battle has been a big thing. And yet part of that is because the pure artist feels like they need complete freedom to just create what's true. But actually all artists need limitation. They all need a container. They need a certain amount of musical notes. They need a size of a canvas. They need a certain amount of clay.
You need a palette.
Yeah. And so by the harmony is in seeing that the entrepreneur gives that container for the artist to pour into. And so there's sort of a path that I take people on. And I would love to now ground it in with a little bit of sort of your almost business side here. And the first module of the program is about uncovering the core conflict that we need to remove in order to align more deeply with our big visions. And so I've just spoken to kind of my core conflict that's been a big part of it. Have you in your life, as you've created so much magic and impacted so many people in the world, is there a core karmic conflict that continues to come up for you that is the thing that you notice is at every next up level consistently showing up?
Yes. And I'm only now becoming aware of it. And that is half-heartedness.
Is that in your gene keys?
It is.
Got it. Which one?
Yep. 29.
Okay. But what spot?
So my gene key 29 basically is related to, I have the shadow, right? It's half-heartedness. The gift is commitment, and the city is devotion.
Do you know what place it's in your chart?
I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
It's your purpose.
It's my purpose. Yeah, it's my purpose. Okay, well that says
that
all
makes
right there,
that makes
right?
it. So your core conflict has been half-heartedness. Can you expand on that?
Yes. So whenever I feel like I will go into something, whether it be work or relationship, otherwise, and I'll always have some sort of plan B. Not from the perspective of plan B that, it becomes my plan A. It doesn't become my plan A, and usually I still manifest my plan A. But having the plan B in the background, I almost want to write a book and say, look, stop with the plan Bs, because plan Bs literally, inadvertently, and the unintended consequence is create a world of plan B. And so whatever we feel, if our hope is stronger than our fear, then the hope will win. Generally. But if our fear is stronger that something won't materialize, like the kid who believes in Santa Claus and then wants to get a bike for Christmas, and he put the bike to manifest it, all the time, and then the bike didn't show up. He's like, I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore, right? This Santa Claus is bullshit, right? I'm not going to do Santa Claus anymore. It's like this, where we get into this mode, we don't even realize that we've created this plan B, and that our fear of not getting it actually took over and became the reality. So what I've noticed about myself is that I will often go into things and always think, well, at least I've got other options, whether it's plan B or C or D or E or whatever number of options. 85 options, right? Because I could do a lot of things with my time. And so therefore, what I really want is that commitment and that devotion. And that's my city. And it could be in my work. It could be in anything, in relationships or otherwise. It's always been a theme over and over and over again. And so that's the theme I'm trying to really kind of get to the root of right now, and realize that the thing that I keep seeking is the thing that will always be elusive to me. if you seek whatever, someone said to me, went to Hoffman, a good friend of mine went to Hoffman Institute up in the Bay Area. And I said, what was it like when you were there? He said, oh, we did a lot of pillow pounding with bats and all this stuff and getting all of our anger issues out and all that. And I was like, okay, but what'd you learn? And he said, I learned that my whole life was based on seeking perfection. And I was told to drop the K, to see the perfection that was right in front of my eyes, that was all around me. It was all perfect. So I no longer had to seek it. And then I started realizing and experiencing that perfection because I was no longer seeking it. It was no longer elusive to me. When you seek something, you automatically place distance and separation between you and the thing that you seek. And it's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people think, because they think, oh, I'm going to have something, you can have some object that you want for your life, whatever that is, or it could be abundance or whatever, a relationship. And so you put it up on a refrigerator door and you say, here's my vision board. And you don't even realize that that might actually have the opposite impact of what you thought. Because by seeking it, you create separation between you and it, instead of embodying the sympathetic resonance of already having it. So if you can change your emotional state to embody the exact sympathetic resonance of already having achieved it, then you can collapse space-time and the wave becomes particle. And then it's like it becomes a reality.
Do you do that intentionally? Like, do you go into meditations for that? Do you do you actually intentionally do that in your life?
Yes, I do. But the thing is, that's the hardest part, is becoming aware of it.
Right.
That's the hardest part of all of this, is getting out of the denial phase. So having the open heart is really the seed to
I
all
find the hardest
experience.
part being doing it. For me personally, my awareness levels.
I think we all have different. For me, when I say it's hardest thing, it's the hardest thing for me.
Got it.
Once I come to the realization of it, once I grok something cognitively, and heart wise, I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. So I came home from my last trip and I was like, okay, I'm doing all these things. Boom, 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 boom.
Got it.
And I just execute. And then there's nothing holding me back. There's no procrastination.
I think mine's been like the emotional shift. Like I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what about it. You've seen it. You came over to your house that I was staying in because you saw my story where I'd been crying in front of the fire. You're like, bro, I'm coming over. And we had that talk and I go, I hit these states sometimes where I just overflow and shifting out of them. I have to move the energy through me, but like to just go, okay, I'm going to shift this has always been a harder thing for me than gaining the awareness that I'm in it necessarily.
I think it'll get easier for you as you transition more fully into your North Node.
Oh, come on.
The Taurus thing, I mean, the water energy of Scorpio versus the earth energy of Taurus and the grounding into that, I think you're going to really start embodying more and more of that. I see that. And you're already doing it.
Yeah.
You're already doing it with your entrepreneurship, all the stuff you're doing. You've transformed everything you're doing from the last year. And it's obvious that there's like a big Taurian kind of influence.
Yeah, and I'm going to have some babies. I'm going to pop some babies out.
That's okay, there you go. One thing at a time, man. One thing at a time.
It's just fun side note as I go to the next question. This tattoo says your dreams must be bigger than your fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
may your dreams always be bigger than your fears.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of look at all this, and right now I'm going through kind of a creative expression thing, and I'm trying to, I've felt for a long time that there's music in me that needs to come out, that I have to write music, that's also a ceremony for me. So it's something that's totally new to me, even though I've been a musician my whole life. I've never composed music before. So now I'm like doing it.
I love that.
So I wrote lyrics for this song, and I have I have someone who's very special to me who I wanted to write, who I wanted to write the song for. And it's like, and then also the experience of, hopefully she'll play it, but she's a DJ. But basically for me, it's like this whole experience of going all in, not looking back, and just being able to go deep into that and hold space for that and be like in devotion to that as well. I think it's the most powerful thing that we can ultimately do, at least for me in my purpose path. That's a critical aspect of it.
Well, as the girls say, I love that for you. So I love that for you. And I'm really proud of you because I know like it's a really vulnerable thing, man, to write and create art for someone. And like, that is a very vulnerable thing. And I just, as someone who does it and understands that vulnerability, I just want to make sure that you really are seen in the courage that takes. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You've been a big inspiration to me on the creative side, for sure. And I do think that just as life is a series of us breaking down our belief systems and expanding the cage of our belief system, I think putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations is one of the most powerful things we can do, because we can expand through those uncomfortable situations and we grow and learn. And that to me is what polymath has all been about too. It's like I'm constantly finding myself in entirely new situations. When I started sculpting, or when I started, my artwork and everything, and I published all these books of my artwork, and it's been such a powerful medicine for me. That art is the medicine for us. It really is.
Thank you.
Art is the medicine. It's
yes.
like, bam.
I love that.
And so I feel really strongly that we all have these latent abilities within us, and we're here on this journey. We think we're going in the outside world. We're really just exploring within. And that's the most beautiful part of the hero's journey that we're all on.
So the second module of my program takes people into identifying what is their 100% certainty offer. And what that means is you have 100% certainty that the right person finding your offer will have their life changed. And the offer doesn't have to be actually practical, it's this thing. And when you move through the world with 100% certainty of something of value that you provide, I think it just changes your frequency and magnetizes so much more to you.
So true.
And so you've gone through stages. I'm curious if there's something right now that you feel is like your 100% certainty offer that you move through the world with.
I think authenticity. That's what I've now committed to more than anything else, is just being 100% authentic all the time. So that means I say what I think, and I say and how I'm feeling. Whereas that's very different for me as a Taurus growing up. I was not that guy. I would go into submarine mode. You would know when I was really...
Even when we first met, to like what you're speaking to, I've seen you transition over the years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever I'd be upset with somebody, I would just put them on ice. I don't even do it consciously. It's so well honed within me. And then I was like, I follow this website like Taurus is Us or something like that. It's all about Taurus. And I'm like reading this stuff and I'm like, wow, I'm like really a Taurus cliche. I am such a Taurus cliche because like, what the hell? But then I saw this video, and even the videos we see on social media and everything, it's all messages from our subconscious mind. None of it's real. And I saw this video of this rodeo, and there was this big bull, and I'll send it to you. This bull's running around the rodeo. It's a massive bull, and the bull starts galloping, and then it jumps over the fence, right, into the crowd. A gigantic bull, and then it gets out into the concessions area, and it just sees people and goes boom, and like knocks them, but they're flying, flipping around and everything. It was like this huge pandemonium thing. And I'm thinking, okay, the bull's out of the cage. The representation of that is this notion that, actually Shervin and I had a pretty epic experience the other night. It's like such a list of crazy synchronicities that he ended up seeing this Cooper hawk that I saw the exact same kind of Cooper hawk. I took a video of it. He's like, what in the heck? We keep seeing this hawk, right? Well, I come out, and long story short, I went to the bathroom to go pee, and I come back out, and he's out there with Jamie, and they're going like this with their hands. And they're saying like, you do. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, this is like from Spock, like live long and prosper.
Everyone listening, they're doing the Star Trek hands.
Yeah, the Star Trek hands. And so they said, well, no, we're just playing around. I said, no, there's no such thing as just playing around in a mind matrix. This symbol is the symbol of the Berhat Kohanim, which is, when you watch this video, actually, that Leonard Nimoy does, it explains how he chose this, because it was actually him who chose this. And the reason he got it was he took it from a Jewish ceremony that were done by rabbis, priests, the Cohens, and they hold their hands like this, and they say a prayer, and they do it in this very discordant sound. It's like weird sound like this, and then they say this prayer, and then this is when they're all supposed to close their eyes, because that's when the Shekinah comes in. This symbol is a symbol of Shin. It's the Hebrew letter Shin. Right? Which is like the Chi in Alpha Chi Omega. So it's the same sheen that would be in Yeshua, right? So Jehovah or Yahweh becomes Yeshua, right? Yeshua. So this became a real thing. So we were like, whoa, this is crazy. So I started thinking, oh, how do I explain this to them, what this means? So I started looking up in the Enochian tables, which Alan Green had done some work on,
obviously.
right? And the Enochian tables have 24 and 26 lines. So it's like this table has got this cross down the center, represents the children of Israel and the encampment of Israel of the tabernacle carrying around the Ark of the Covenant. And so it's got 24 lines and 26 lines down. And at the bottom right-hand corner is the cipher key. And the cipher key is 624. 624 because 24 times 26 equals 624. So something tells me, look up numbers 624 through 26. And it's this very famous, oft quoted scripture, which says, the Lord bless thee and keep thee. Let the Lord shine his countenance about thee and give thee peace, right? I'm paraphrasing. So I only get 3 words out. And Shervian's like, what the? I can't even believe this. He turns on the TV. He's like, I was just watching Braveheart, which is his favorite movie. And he didn't even know that I'd literally founded my company on the whole show, Braveheart, right? Mm-hmm. Scotland theme and all that stuff. And so he's like, this is my favorite movie. And he cues it up to when the father dies of Mel Gibson, right? And he's dead on the table and his uncle shows up, Argyle. And he gives the Lord bless thee and keep thee. He gives this prayer. He's holding a sword when he does it. And then right after that, the little boy is going into a dream state. And he sees his father wake up from his dead table. And he leans over to him and he goes, oh, like this. He says, your heart is free. Now have the courage to follow it. And it was like this whole moment, right? We had this absolute moment where all of us saw this. And, after we'd done this thing with the hands and everything, we watched this thing. This whole experience was like, whoa, we all had this crazy moment. And we hear the sound come in the back door and everything. We're like, what in the heck's going on? It was such a synchronous moment for us all that we started realizing there is literally no separation between what we experience in the outside world and what is inside of us that is meant to come out. So the place where creativity comes out from is when we are in our absolute authentic self. When we're absolute authentic self, we can channel and touch into and no longer be limited by this dimensionally limited avatar self. We can actually tap into the higher self that created all of it. See the whole thing from a different perspective. Start to realize, why did I choose what I chose? Why did I choose half-heartedness as my purpose to overcome? Not that there's anything wrong with being half-hearted. It just was a principle that I wanted to learn through this experience, through this lifetime, so that I could find my diamond heart within. And that is exactly the life story that each of us have. We have to just simply find our supreme and absolute authenticity. And when we find that supreme and absolute authenticity, have the courage to follow it.
I love that very much. And to how you tied that whole thing together, the bull out of the cage because of an Instagram video that just had so much, I watched Instagram videos of a monkey raising a kitten, so I don't know what that means, but you know what I mean? Who knows what it could lead to? We have 3 minutes left.
Sure.
And I have 3 questions, so we're going to go rapid fire, okay?
Okay.
So core conflict, which you just identified, the certainty, which for you is authenticity, which I think leads into this third one, which is about crafting signature content. Like your thing that people feel your essence through. And I think that your geometry and your math really speaks for itself there. But for someone who's trying to find what is the thing that captures my essence? How did you, is there a short way that you feel like you've arrived there?
You know what I think it is? It's my message is not really about geometry as much as it is about what comes as a result of connecting with my higher self. What's the message? The larger message is love and be loved.
So just connecting to our higher selves and letting that express.
And one of the things that I think I learned this through was I was really contemplating this idea of math with meaning. And I started thinking about, duality. The entire musical scale is built on the roots of 2. So the 1/12th root of 2 is the first note in the scale. The second note of the scale is, the 2/12th root of 2. And then, the 3 12th root of 2. It goes all the way up and literally separates all the way up to make and differentiate the entire scale. And the exact center of a scale logarithmically is the square root of 2. Mm-hmm. So if 1 times 1 really equaled 2, then we'd literally have no differentiation. Because then there could be no unison note that then becomes the first note, the minor second, the major third, the minor third, all the way through the scale. Mm-hmm. You lose all of that differentiation. There'd be no light and no sound differentiation. But when you start to realize the square root of 2 is the foundational basis of the essence of duality, that the backdrop of this entire world is based on the square root of 2, everything about it. And the discordant nature of what we call the diminished fifth in music is that. So it creates a backdrop of time. It creates a backdrop of scarcity. It creates a backdrop of lack in general on everything. Separation. But when we add it to the square root of 3, so let's just say that the square root of 2 is the divine or the duality essence, the essence of duality. What would be the essence of divinity? Maybe the square root of 3. 3 is the Trinity. Mm-hmm. So the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, what does that equal? It's approximately pi.
Infinite.
That's interesting. So I have a diameter of 1, and the circumference of that diameter of 1 will be pi. So that means that 1 is here, and then root 2, which is 1.4142, and root 3 close the circle around the diameter of 1. That's pretty epic, right? It's like, whoa, who designed all this perfection? That's really amazing. But then I started thinking, okay, the square root of 2 makes me think of Saturn, makes me think of like lead. Even the shape of the square root of 2 looks like the alchemical symbol for Saturn. Looks like a square root of 2. What percentage of the circle circumference is attributable to the square root of 2? When I add the context of divinity to the essence of duality, what percentage of that circle, and then in degrees, how would I reference that? In degrees, it comes out to be 161.816 degrees. So I just went from the square root of 2 being lead, and 1618, you might know it, is the golden ratio. The square root of 2, the suffering, the difficulty, everything we experience now in a circle with the diameter of 1 has a circumference of pi, and 0.449 of it is 161.8 degrees, which makes the lead turn to gold. Literally the golden ratio. Lead turns to gold.
Alchemy.
When we have the context of we are going through the suffering and the difficulty that we experience so that we can ascend by putting the divine context around it, then we start realizing every difficult experience we face is actually part of the reason why we're here. It's just like going through the gene key, right? And figuring out what is my shadow, what is my gift, and what is my city, and how do I get into my city? And the teachers that I had in high school and junior high that were easy, I don't even remember their names. I only remember the ones that were hard. Now I've replaced teachers in my life with experiences. Those experiences have become my greatest teachers. Even the most difficult ones become the most divine because I learn the most from them. It's literally turning lead into gold. And it's a numerical relationship. And what we need to understand our suffering is the relationship to the divine, that the divine brings us full circle.
Thank you for that. I didn't think we would get through this without some math. So I'm glad that you brought that in and just got to show people that really the algorithm of this reality is so magical. So super rapid fire, last two, okay? The fourth one is really about growing your audience by building authentic relationships. How do you build an authentic relationship? So for someone who's on this path, they feel like they have something to share, they have something of value. How have you found, or what advice would you give to someone who's really wanting to build authentic relationships with their social media audience to see it grow?
Don't do it to grow it. Well, that sounds probably cliche.
Yeah.
Do it because it's an authentic expression of who you are. Allow authenticity in yourself. Be vulnerable. Allow yourself to share because it's going to benefit you. The benefit to you is the learning, right? That's the only way that I know. For me, I just started sharing because I wanted to authentically share it. I wanted to allow people into my journey, because if I really believe in a you inverse, then there's no one that's separate from me. They're all me too.
And so then how does that, so going into the fifth and final question, when it's time to monetize, for people who want to build a monetization ecosystem to create financial abundance for themselves, or even get out of their scarcity and their struggle to pay the rent, how does this all tie in for you? For someone who's in that place of going, I want to share my gifts in a way that actually makes me money. Is it the same answer? Or do you have a different answer around how the monetization aspect to bring in abundance?
Turn your work into love.
Hmm.
So, you know, I just announced I've got a trip going to Peru, like yesterday. It went out yesterday, I think. And basically it's already, you know, like fully subscribed. Like it was immediate. And I asked everybody, I'm like, hey, it wasn't even for this trip. Would you like to go on one of these trips? You know, would you like to apply? So we build up our list of people that are candidates that want to go. And literally I said, just type in yes, you know, on here. And I had like 700 responses, right? Instantly. It's because of the love. As soon as you feel your offering will be refused or will be scarce, it will be scarce. If you think you can or you think you can't, you will be right. So don't allow your fears to determine the trajectory of your success, whatever that is.
Your dreams must be bigger than your fears.
Your dreams must be bigger than your fears. And your hope that those dreams will materialize has to be bigger than your fear that they won't. And I think that's such a critical thing, that, and all that happens is the mix that you have between hope and fear on that, or belief that it will materialize versus it not materializing, is going to determine how long it takes to manifest it.
Right. The ratio, the percentages.
That's right. Those percentages are direct. It's pure math. Everything in this universe is pure math. And if you realize that the world around you is literally the summation of all of your beliefs, and it will not be more than that, it will not be less than that, then start changing your beliefs so that you can actually change your experience.
Robert, as always, we could talk forever. I love you so much.
Love you too, man.
Can you let people know how they can follow you, where they can find your work?
Sure. Yeah. RobertEdwardGrant.com is my website. Also Robert Edward Grant on Instagram and pretty much every platform now. And it's been exciting to see, you know, for me, I just kind of see these milestones and now under my name, you know, on all the different social media platforms, over 1 million, like 1.1 million followers now, which is like, I still can't even believe that. Like,
That's
honestly,
amazing.
every day I'm like, what the heck?
Well-deserved, man. Congratulations. And hopefully this has been inspiring to people who are on the creative path for themselves, and to hear your unique approach to creativity and your life as someone who impacts the world in such a positive way, and someone who's been a dear friend and brother to me for many years now. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast and going on this creative path journey with us. If you've gotten value from this, please pay it forward, share it out, tag us in your stories. Let us know what was the biggest insight that you got from this incredible human here. And yeah, let's just continue to spread consciousness through our own learnings, because like Robert said earlier, we are just facets of one consciousness. And so I appreciate you so much, and want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you are interested in building a life that you love through the 3 pillars of relationship, business, and creativity, then I encourage you to continue checking out more of my content, including this video, which I really think that you will like.